Season of the Boys coming out next month, I thought I'd share with you how you can recreate the Starlight fabric at home. Previously, I've covered how you can make the gloves and the boots for this project, but in this video, I'll cover the cheaper methods that you can use to make the print, which inks work the best, and how you can accurately recreate the Starlight fabric at home. So what are the different methods that you can use to make the Starlight print? So the first method is screen printing. You can get this done professionally, but it does cost quite a bit, although you can also get a screen at home, which can be a bit more tedious, but definitely saves a lot of money than getting it professionally done. You could also paint or individually stamp the stars on. Although this is a cheaper option than the screen printing, it does require a lot more time because you're having to pattern match each individual star rather than run it through a template. And another option is to use a Sports Flex vinyl. So this is a fairly simple option because all you need to do is cut out the stars, place them on and iron them onto the fabric. But I would be careful because with the Sports Flex it can reduce the amount of stretch. So depending on how much you need the costume to stretch over your body, this option might not be the one for you. So these are the methods that I sampled when making the Starlight costume. And the main one I'm going to focus on is the screen printing. So now moving on to what are the inks that you can use. So the first one that I tried out was just a normal screen printing ink. So this was my sample with the normal screen printing ink, and it was good, but for the type of fabric that I was using, it didn't allow enough stretch, so it did crack when it was actually on the body. So I found that this ink didn't actually work that well for the scuba that I was using. The next ink that I tried, because I was trying to get a 3D effect, was the puff ink. So with this ink, you would mix it with the original screen printing ink and drag it across like normal, then heat it up and it should rise and give a puff effect. And I did try this, and it did create a bit of a raised effect, but once again with the stretch, it did crack and end up peeling off. So this one I also wouldn't recommend for this costume because you need to be able to have that stretch around the body. So the next one that I looked at was a flex ink. Now this one actually created the best stars when I was sampling. All the stars ended up being quite crisp and clean, and it would also stretch with the scuba that I was using. So I do recommend trying to use 2 layers of this ink just to get the full coverage that you need so there's not going to be any cracks when it's pulled. And the final ink that I tested was a silicone one. Now this one, I couldn't actually use the screen for it. So for these ones I tested it with an acetate template so that it would be easier to actually take the silicone off of it afterwards. But it did scrape through quite nicely and the silicone does stretch with the fabric. I think the only downside with it was that it would kind of become lumpy on the underside. Although I was tempted to use the underside to make the actual garment because I was after that 3D effect. But after a while I did just settling for the nice and neater option of having the stars on top. So these were all the inks that I sampled before actually moving on to my final make. And in the end, I opted for using the flex ink because it came out with the neatest stars. So if the ink's covered, how do you then accurately recreate this at home? And all you need is a fairly simple setup. So what you'll need is a cutting board or a flat surface that you can tape down your fabric to so that it doesn't get peeled off when you're starting to print onto it. A hairdryer, so you'll need this to dry your stars after every round of printing so you're not smudging the previous ones. You'll also need a squidgy just to actually drag the ink across, your ink and your template. And that's all you need to actually make the Starlight fabric. So you should end up having a setup that looks like this. So you've got your cutting mat or even a piece of cardboard that you can weight down and tape your fabric onto, your squidgy for dragging the ink onto the template, a hairdryer to dry, and then just your template. For my template that I used, I did originally use a screen with the template on, but it would always pull the fabric, so I ended up using the acetate template. So once you've got your setup complete, all you need to do is cut out your fabric pieces for your Starlight costume. So once you've got all of those pieces cut out, you then tape each individual piece onto whatever flat surface you're using. And then you're just going to add the ink onto your acetate that's on top of your fabric and drag that across evenly. And then using the squidgy, you'll just pull that down in one motion, printing onto the fabric. And you can then just peel that off and use a hairdryer to just dry those stars. It only takes a couple of minutes for the stars to dry, and then you can move on to the next part of your pattern and repeat the process. But once you're done, you'll have all of your patterns printed with the Starlight pattern on them. So this costume as a whole took me quite a lot of time with the sampling and figuring out what inks would actually look best. But overall, I think the print I was able to actually produce quite a nice outcome, and it did make the costume look quite polished. And I hope this video helps with how you can recreate Starlight's fabric at home, and that you make sure to sample before you move on to the finished product. But if you're interested in any of my commission and alteration work, there'll be a link in the description below. And if you want to see any more progress on this project and any of my other content, be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.